Hey, I'm Adam and this is the Uplink port, and in today's episode I genuinely need to make some space in here. It's been a few days since Zen very kindly delivered me their care package, and while I feel like a kid in a candy store with enterprise grade networking equipment literally everywhere, I very much feel like that kid that's eaten all the candy in said candy store because I cannot physically move in here. And the only way I'm going to get round that is by actually completing and finishing off some of the other projects that are quite large, such as the bonded CD, getting some of the hardware put into the rack that needs to be in there so we can actually crack on with the ISP series and look at some of the carrier backhaul side of stuff that we want to be going through in future videos. So whether you're into retro networking gear or just curious on how things work, stick around. Right, when we were last in this overview, I was not coming to you with good news. Obviously, I had completely forgot to check that the power supply was off on the power supply itself and also on the wall. And of course, in plugging it in, caused a short and then let the magic smoke out of the graphics card. Now, I had, and I should have done beforehand, taken out all the important components like the Sangoma modems. They are like hen's teeth trying to find those, and incredibly expensive. So I'm hoping that they have survived. However, I now know less of the status of those than anything else in here. I also don't know the status of a board that I've bought off of eBay. Apparently it is in a working condition, but who knows. The CPU, I don't know. The memory, I don't know. Literally nothing. The only thing I do know works is the power supply, which has come from one of my retro builds, which is going in here because I simply do not trust this one. Now, I had planned to build all of this outside of the case, as I said. However, the CD-ROM drive is in the cage. The hard drive is on an adapter plate, which is in the cage, which is attached to the chassis. I am just being slightly lazy. And to be honest, while the chassis has got quite a bit of rust in places, overall at the bottom doesn't look too bad. So what we'll do is we'll strip all this out, and if it is in a usable condition, we will build straight into it. It also gives me the opportunity to talk to you guys about Upstream Internet and also the bonded CD and a bit of history behind it as well. I was planning to do a voiceover with it. However, I can already see bits of this board that I will probably want to talk about. So I'm going to try and kill two birds with one stone in that doing that, and also talking about everything I've just mentioned with respect to the history. So let's change camera angle and let's start pulling this out and having a chat. Right, first of all, let's get this brace out of the way. Now these were great because you could put your cards in and you could set the arms to go down, sit on the cards, and it stopped them from moving about. Now, where to begin? Right, let's pull all these out. Thinking about it, I don't have a manual for this board, or it's probably online, but probably should have paid attention as to where they went before I did that. Never mind. Right, let's get all these out the way. Now, Upstream Internet is an interesting ISP within the UK history, purely because it specialised in bonding. There were a few others around at the time that sort of did it. However, Upstream Internet were the only one that sort of gave you a one-stop shop effectively for everything, in that you could buy it all through them, you put it together, and then effectively you ran a software solution that made all this work with very minimal effort. It was a great product. Now, the bonded CD actually started life before Upstream Internet started trading. Upstream Internet actually started trading, or at least the website was operational, as of the 9th of July 2006. The bonded CD actually dates back from 2004. Now, it goes slightly before that time as well. So back before then, the bonded CD was predominantly focused on USB modems. Now, back on November 25th of 2004, Eddie, through development work with Sangoma, was able to get the Sangoma modems to actually work with MLPPP. So that then ended the release of the modem support and then pushed it towards the PCI devices, and effectively you had a really nice all-in-one solution, and that is then what the bonded CD really ramped up on. Now, if you bought the Sangoma cards from Upstream Internet, then they gave you a license per card in order to run the software for free. Now I believe as well, back in the day, if you bought your broadband services through Upstream Internet as well, you also got a free license to use the bonded CD. Now I cannot 100% remember. Now we have the domain, so that should be possible, both manipulating it and also having it in real time as well, and it is registered to me to overcome any of that. And I'd be interested to see how the licensing works, as to whether it just picks up on the realm, i.e. upstreaminter.net, and then lets you log in. But as I said, we do potentially have 2 working licenses from Ellis in the community Discord, so that shouldn't really be an issue. But the whole bonded CD was all about being licensed. Now, back in 2004, before ADSL Max, you typically had BT Centrals, and BT Centrals were incredibly expensive. So taking note of BT's pricing sheet at the time, a BT Central, which was typically limited by the ATM size of 155 meg, which you could go all the way up to 620 meg, but a typical 155 meg BT Central would set you back £3,750 a month just for the link. And I've missed a screw, which was ridiculous money. Now that size Central would typically get you around 8,000 sessions of what we refer to as Home 500, or you could have a mix and match of Home 500, Home 1000, Office 2000, or the different products that you could have available. But effectively you had a 155 meg limit before any overheads. Now Upstream Internet came into the world where it was incredibly expensive to run, and Upstream Internet were a small ISP. Now, it didn't go without its challenges, unfortunately. During its life with Upstream Internet, they did have financial issues, and during its time in operation, Richard Ballard came over and I believe offered financial support. I'm not entirely sure exactly what happened. Details on that online I cannot find anymore, but I remember there being some form of additional money that came in through investors. Don't quote me on it. But Upstream Internet did continue to trade. However, it did cease trading back in 2009, when in the exact terms 26th of November 2009, and I remember it quite vividly because we were caught up in all of it at the time, and it's the news article that I've given in previous videos. And it's kind of a shame because the Upstream, well, the bonded CD, oh my word, this is in a hell of a state. It's rusty. Inside, no. I don't trust that at all. And things are falling out all over the floor. What is just falling out on the floor? I cannot see it for the life of me. I saw what it was. It's like the white, like silicone that holds down components and capacitors and whatnot. But some of that's just falling out on the floor. I cannot see where it's gone. Anyway. Yeah, we got very much caught up in it, as did a load of other people. Now, they did continue to allow you to use the bonded CD, I think it was about a year after Upstream Internet ceased trading, so you could move away to other platforms. So I'm curious as to how that worked. Maybe there was a licensing server in the background for all of this. I honestly don't know. But that is the very quick overview of Upstream Internet in itself. The forum, I mean, effectively the website really was just a forum, and that was on WordPress. Now that's still accessible via archive.org for various different pages. However, not all of it is there, and it's where a lot of the information I got came from. However, even so, there's a lot of it that is missing, and I cannot honestly remember entirely everything that went on. But Upstream Internet was certainly a bit of a roller coaster towards the end. Now there were ISPs, and there were a few ISPs out there that supported MLPPP. Vispa were one, I think DOWNSTREAM were one, Internet was certainly one of the ones as well. And we did all manage to find our way across to other service providers. And in fact, at the time, we found a company called ShareBand, which I wasn't planning on talking about. However, as I'm taking forever to do this, I thought I would mention it. So ShareBand also offered bonding, but it was their own proprietary platform, and we've actually still got shareband hardware that is sat in the office. Now these are the same IO shields as well, and that one looks in good nick, so we're literally just going to drop that in. Now shareband didn't require you to have your broadband from the same ISP. You could take it from multiple ISPs. They supplied you the hardware. You had an aggregation server. Why isn't this fitting in? There we go. They had an aggregation server, and then the modems effectively connected to that, and you did bonding through that. I believe it was some kind of like tunnel bonding or VPN bonding. I'm not entirely sure. I can't remember. But we ended up down the shareband route, and from most of it, that was absolutely fine. We didn't have any issues with it. It then meant we weren't beholden on a particular ISP. There was no messing around with complex setups in the background. And one of the other things that shareband did was that you didn't get with MLPPP was you actually got the benefit of the sync rates of all the lines. I.e., if one line connected at 6 meg and the other line connected at 10, you'd actually get 16 meg roughly. It wasn't exact, but it was a damn sight better than it defaulting down to the slowest line on MLPPP. I have lost screws. I don't know where. Oh, yeah, sat here behind all of that. So it was an interesting time back in sort of 2006. The rapid requirement for bandwidth, well, it still continues today really, but obviously there's much higher speed products available in majority of places. I'm not going to say everywhere. Central London is still one that you can only get ADSL 2+ in some places. However, overall things have improved to a degree over the years. But Upstream Internet was a fantastic ISP. You got to speak directly to Eddie. However, towards the end of Upstream Internet, he very much put himself behind a support email address, and you couldn't necessarily talk to him directly. Just making sure I've got all the screws because I have one left over. But it was a fantastic experience being with Upstream Internet. Thoroughly enjoyed. Would I do it again? Absolutely. It was a time when the internet was forming. There weren't really many rules. It was a fantastic experience. I loved every single moment of it. Right, we need to finish off getting this board together. I don't know why I'm doing all of those because I don't have all of them. Let's pull these memory sticks off screen. Look at these micro mini, what are they? DDR? Yes. All right. I should have paid attention to what these came out of. I don't know if it matters. Again, I don't have a board. Looking at the slots that are open on the other one, it came out with green slots, so let's go and put it in the green ones. Let's put it in around the right way. This isn't very reminiscent of how I used to build these back in olden days. Go in. I really hope this works. Right, I've done enough rambling. I'm going to go and put the rest of this together, I think, and we will see, because given how clumsy I'm making all of this, doesn't bode well. I suppose the only thing actually I will do before I disappear is have a look at the state of this CPU. So let's just pop this here and get these off. Obviously this is an Intel CPU. I used to love AMD back in the day, but oh my lord, this looks absolutely disgusting. I'm going to take a close-up of that and put that up on screen. Let's see what this is actually like. Oh, it's all crunchy. Oh, this thing's filthy. Don't drop it. Well, underneath looks okay. However, on the top is extremely corroded. There aren't any surface mount components on this, and this, what is this? This is a Intel Celeron dual core 2 GHz E1400. Right, I'm going to get this cleaned up, I think, and everything else put back together, and then we'll try and work out how we're going to power this up in stages, I guess, or we'll just do it all in one go. Well, let's put it all back together and see if we've got any shorts. Right, I need fingers. Let's put this here for the second, and I know that's not where it goes, but I need my hands. Right, so the other thing I spotted is these two jumpers, which I hadn't noticed were different to the other board. I don't know what those jumpers are for. I don't have a book. Battery, CMOS battery's been taken out. I don't know if it's got any charge in it or not, but I've taken it out, given it a few minutes, put it back in. Let's see, why are we not? Oh, it's because it's on the power supply off. I would have expected a beep as well from sort of this generation board. That's assuming the PC speaker still works, and I don't get why that is doing that. Is it just going to be a case of leaving it? Is there something wrong? All the memories in the slots that it needs to be in? Is it a graphics card issue? Everything is in where it should be. CMOS has been technically reset. Are we getting hung up? Is it a graphics card? So the thing is, I don't even know if this graphic card works. I do have another couple of graphics cards that are PCI based. Maybe I'll go and grab them. Or maybe this is just dead in its entirety. And I was hoping, well, I say I was hoping, who am I kidding? I was just hoping I was going to plug this in and it was going to turn on, but that does not appear to be the case. Right, back in a bit. Right, so interestingly, with the graphics card unplugged, it still does exactly the same thing in that it powers on and off. Now, to eliminate the graphics card, I have two other PCI graphics cards, a rather old graphics card. We have an S3 Trio 64 and a Cirrus Logic. Now, again, I don't know if any of these work or whether they did work before they came in here. More to the point. However, it's doing exactly the same thing, so I don't think it's video card related unless it was an incompatibility. So I wonder if it's memory. I suppose the only thing we can do is start by taking out a memory stick to see if the same thing happens. And turning it back on would help Adam. Right, so that is doing, oh no, we have beeps. Is it memory related? Let's pop that off. Let's pop this graphics card in the top slot. I might be overthinking this already, and this is probably just not going to be it, but what have we got to lose at this stage? This is all fault finding. Power back on. Well, we haven't got the power off and back on. Oh my god! That's awesome! Can you see it on the screen? Yes! We are working! Which means we have a faulty memory stick. That in itself is not a bad thing, because that is relatively cheap, hopefully, to replace. I've not had a look to see how much memory is these days, especially old stuff, but I'm assuming that it's not going to be too bad. Do I need all the memory to boot the system? That is the next question. I honestly don't know. But that is a bloody success. What have I got plugged in? I've got everything plugged in. I just don't, obviously the BIOS isn't set up. let me run through setting up the BIOS. I think the next thing to do would be to see whether we can get these plugged in and whether these still boot with the system. There is surface rust on there, however it doesn't appear to be on the boards at all. Now, these look conformally coated, but they're not. I think it's just a really shiny PCB. Yeah. Either way, right. Let's continue. Right. I've plugged in the hard drives because the BIOS wouldn't find any of them, and obviously I hadn't realised they were unplugged. The CD drive now has the CD in it, which was the last thing before I turned this off. I have no idea if this is going to boot. I haven't set the boot order up because they were unplugged. You are literally seeing what happens for the first time, the same as me, when we turn it on. I cannot even remember how this boots. I know it boots Linux. The CD drive spinning up. Oh, we are booting, and I didn't screw the PSU in, so I need to be mindful of that. Oh, that is incredible to see. I just realised you can't see everything that's happening down the bottom of the screen. Not particularly the best for me to have done that, is it? Now, I don't have the USB plugged in at this moment in time. It is just off to the side. I don't know if I can get to it. It is here. And obviously this is the one that's got the corruption on it. So I'm going to format it and put files on it and see what happens. What are we seeing? Looking for USB flash, none found. Looking for ID floppy, not found. Ah, yes, of course, you could have... that CD-ROM drive sounds horrendous. You could have the config files, I think, on a floppy drive, but that is a success. I am relatively speechless, and I'm changing cameras as well. That's friggin' awesome. We stand a real chance of getting this booted and working today, which would be awesome if it is. Now I need to tidy everything up, and I need to sort out a better viewing angle for you lot, because this thing is gigantic, and obviously having the screen up there all the way, to be fair, I've put the lid on. It's probably not going to be too bad, so I can rest the screen on the lid. That is friggin' awesome. Right, I need to tidy all of this up. Obviously I've just realised I still haven't put the Sangoma cards in, so we need to do that. I need to put files on the USB stick. I think, subject to these working, we are in a really good position, and we stand a really good chance at getting in. Oh, and I need to screw that in because I keep forgetting. Of getting this booted and online and logged in and working. I'm excited. Let me tidy all of this up, and I will come back to you when we're ready. Right, it is D-Day, and I noticed going back through the other footage that this being round the right way for me was round the wrong way for you. So I'm going to see this upside down, and you, all being well, are going to see this round the right way. Now, everything inside has been put back together. The CPU cooler is still being held down with that metal cable tie. I will need to get a new one of those at some point, assuming all this works. The fans have all been installed, but this has a separate breakout board for the fan controller, and this power supply only has two 4-pin Molex connectors, of which are plugged into the CD-ROM drive and the hard drive. So for now they are going to remain unplugged, and that is pretty... Oh, and the two Sangoma cards are actually plugged in as well, so we'll see if it boots with those in. I've probably been a bit optimistic closing this all up, but it was the only way you guys could actually see this properly without me having to hold the screen. Also, the USB flash drive has been formatted, and it has taken a copy of the files that Ellis very kindly sent me. I've edited those files as per the manual, and also removed the ones that we don't need for like IP tables and for routed IP blocks. At the minute, this is solely a base configuration to hopefully get this booted, so that then we can log into Webmin, start exploring, go through the documentation and work out what else we can put on this to enhance this overall. But from a base configuration, this should be all we need in order to get this up and running. So I'm going to go and pop the drive into the USB slot, and I'm going to make sure everything is on, which it is now. Let's see if this boots. Good. We still have a boot screen, so with the Sangoma cards in, at least the system still boots. Whether it sees those cards or not, I don't know. And from your perspective, that is around the right way. However, extremely washed out on the screen, so I can only apologise. I'm hoping this sees the USB stick. I don't know what happens after the USB stick. I'm assuming it goes to a Linux login screen. I have also got the network cable plugged in from this into my laptop, and I've got the IP details in the documentation which we need in order to access this. I don't believe this is running DHCP. As I said, it has been an awful long time since I last used this. Now, interestingly, looking for USB flash devices, it's found it. I can't read upside. Media found looks like the bonded CD. Yes, we are starting the image. This is awesome. I've not seen this in such a long time. I can't read half of it upside down. It looks like it's starting services. So, hard drive setup. Oh yeah, I remember reading in the guide there was something about setting this up for the hard drive in which this is currently going in for, and if you upgrade it then you don't have to, but you can rerun the hard drive setup. So there's a lot for me to still learn with all of this. And I'm assuming the pause here is not normal. CD-ROM drive still spinning away, but sorry, I'm looking at my OBS screen because everything's round the right way on that. Timeout ADSL. So the ADSL lines, of course, it's probably starting the whatever process it is on Linux. I can't remember. And that's going to time out for line 2. I'm just going to have a look to see. The cards aren't lit up, as in powered, but I don't know whether they only lit up when something was physically plugged into them. Please check the kernel log for details. I'm assuming that's going to error on card 2 as well. I could plug the lines in, but I don't have the DSLAM or anything like that on at the second. Okay, well, it seems to be seeing both the cards. I'll have to scan through all of this to see if I see it searching for the Sangoma card, but one step at a time. I can't read that upside down. WAN pipe ADSL starting training. Okay, it does seem to see the Sangoma card, and it's just moaning about the fact that they're not in sync. The cards themselves still don't have any lights on them. I think what I'm going to have to do now is turn the DSLAM on, power that up, and get those plugged in. But let's also see if we can see this from a web browser. Hello and welcome to Chaos behind me in more ways than one. That seems to have booted, and I have already set my laptop with the IP address that we need to log into this. Now, if I jump back to here, this is the documentation that I've been going through. I was able to find documentation for version 2.6D. I think this is, yes, 2.6D. I do not know what version the CD is running. It could be 2.6D, it could be older. I honestly don't know. I would imagine it's older. 2.6D was the last version released, and I honestly cannot remember when that was installed or when it was taken out of service. However, it's kind of irrelevant. It should roughly be the same. It's only going to be maybe features that are slightly different. So we've done everything in the documentation. I have got the chap secrets file that's already on the stick, and resolve that's on the stick, and webmin suicide. Now that isn't a standard file in here at very least. It's something you have to enable, which we've done. I've already set up Adam at upstreaminter.net with a password. I've set resolve just to Google and Cloudflare at the second. Fundamentally, scrolling through, these are, well, that's the IP address that the system is sitting on. See below, transfer or LAN associated NAT, the ISP. There are details on setting up this for no NAT or a block of rooted IPs. Okay, syncs to a line. You should now be able to access the internet from other PCs by configuring them to use the body. So, from what this reads, that should just be ready to go. Obviously, I've got to fire up the DSLAM and we've got to put the username and password into Radius. But in theory, that should just be it. It should just work and connect. Now, I'm assuming this is what webmin, yeah, this is what webmin, sitting on login page for webmin, which we've got webmin enabled. So, let's very quickly jump on this and see what happens. Now, it was... Well, that's interesting. Oh, password. Bonded 83. Oh, I do remember that now, seeing it. This takes me back. So, Free Stuff Junction as well was also something that Eddie used to own. And it's something I haven't touched on yet because Free Stuff Junction was his personal website, I believe, before Upstream Internet was released, but Free Stuff Junction used to host a lot of the stuff as well. This brings back so many memories, and I can hear the drive spinning up. I remember now, all of this ran literally off of the CD. I cannot remember what the hard drive's for. I'll have to read through the documentation, but everything is here that you could possibly really need. It said this was a really simple GUI effectively for administrating this and just setting it up. So we've got boot and shutdown, command shell, custom commands, DHCP server. So it is running DHCP on the subnet that we've already on. You can run IP set. We've got a file manager. Can we see? Oh, we're going to need Java for that, of which we don't have installed on this. But you can probably get to the USB stick from it. Text editor. So this is all the files. These aren't all the files that are on the USB stick. These are actually what are currently loaded, I believe. I don't know whether these are going to load either. No. But then again, this is designed for a much older web browser. So maybe we'll have a look at this more in detail in Windows XP. System information. Where's our Celeron? Been up for 16 minutes. CPU load, memory usage, file system, network statistics. Actually, does this show what version of the bonded CD we're running? .6e. So we're running a version after the documentation. It's entirely possible that archive.org didn't get anything after what I got. Either way, we're only one version out of date, which basically means everything in the documentation should be very much valid for this. And again, it's kind of irrelevant. Anyway, this should just work. View log files. So yeah, waiting out for PPP. The only thing now is to turn the DSLAM on and see if this actually connects and just works. I mean, obviously I said we've got to set up radius and so forth, but in theory this could be a really quick ending, and obviously we will explore this a little bit more as well. We're somewhat limited in what we can do with it because we don't have a rooted IP block, but even if we have a rooted IP block, we're just going to add a firewall effectively on the end of this, which is going to be no different than this, really just doing that. So Let's see if this works. Right, I've just plugged those in and they've just come into sync after a few seconds. I did take a clip on my mobile, so I'll see if I can overlay that as to when it actually came up. Let's refresh this. Waiting now for 50 seconds for PPP. This is probably PPPoA, and the DSLAM is configured for PPPoE, I think. I can't remember. Or no, it's configured for LC, isn't it? Or LLC. So let's change that to VC Mux. Let's change port 2 to VC Mux. Now the CD just kicked into life, so is it doing something that needs the CD, i.e. logging in? Unsupported protocol received. But we do have an IP address and it's picked up a default route. So let's just jump back to here. We have 2 logins. That's a problem. This isn't going to work because the Cisco that I need to do all of this isn't plugged in. I plugged the microchip back in, but we have an authentication session on both lines, which means it's working, just not bonded. I need to swap in the Cisco. Give me a minute. Right, the Cisco is powered up, and the only reason I turned it off is because when I recorded everything that turned up from Zen the other day, I needed the space on my desk and also right next to it, so it actually meant closing the cabinet door properly, which meant unplugging the cables from the Ciscos that were sat on top, and I just naturally plugged them back into the MikroTik. And of course, recording today, I needed the power cable out of the Cisco for the screen, and of course with not having anything plugged in down there, I just completely forgot that the Cisco wasn't plugged in, and of course the MikroTik powered up as it should have done when I turned the cabinet on. And I just completely forgot I needed the Cisco, but it is now all online. So the next thing to do is to see whether the bonded CD itself has logged in and if any of this is working. Okay, so a few hours has passed and I got distracted, if that's possible, but in this case it is because this turned up. Now this is a rather cheap 48 volt 10 amp DC power supply, and it's in addition to the mainstream communications 2U DC power supply I have in the cabinet for the DSLAM. Now the only reason I've got that is because of the EGX behind me, the Adva platform. I played with that a little bit over the weekend, which is why you can see half the line cards are out on it. And even with half the line cards out and only half of this actually running because it comes in 2 sections, I was drawing almost 10 amps. So I get the sneaking suspicion that the current draw on that with the other modules in is going to be significantly higher. And with the mainstream unit that's in there, even with various fuses and safeties bypassed in order to get that to boot because of the sheer inrush due to the DC power supply caps on this, I was running over spec for that unit. So I have a proper DC power supply on order for that as well. However, just so we can mess around with it in the short term, I do have that, which should hopefully enable us to get it booted and just at least wipe the config off of it and go through the plan with it. Anyway, that's a future video. This is now. Let's get into this and see what the bonded CD is doing. Okay, so my plan is to use exactly the same testing platform as we did with Cisco, in that the Windows 10 image is plugged into the bonded CD via the ESXi internal switch and the external link out that we had originally plugged into the Cisco. So all of that remains the same. I was going to use a Windows XP image, but of course the issue with that is while I can go through the GUI and have a look at stuff, we won't be able to do any testing on anything because I don't have any modern browser installed or anything like that on that. So we're kind of limited in that. We will use the Windows XP image because we want to go through the menu in detail, because I'd like to see what was there, and also we'll go through the manual as well to see what the actual bonded CD was capable of and what we can and cannot enable on it. Now, from this point of view, to see whether this is online, I'm just going to log in to Dello Radius and see what it thinks is going on. I don't know whether it's going to be 2 logging sessions or just 1 or any for that matter, so let's log in. Okay, both of them are there, and that's exactly what we saw with the Cisco originally on the 1841. Now, that did drop down to one session when I messed around in the afternoon. Whether this is normal or not, I honestly don't know. As I said in the previous video, I don't know what the front end of an MLPPP session being terminated looks like. Now, going back through this, we can see it went up and down, up and down, up and down. These times are very wrong, and Brad, I will install an NTP server at some point in the future because it would make debugging this an awful lot easier. But all of this appears to be when the MikroTik was installed, and of course the ADSL lines were effectively fighting each other because of course the MikroTik doesn't do MLPPP tunnel termination. Since then, these two sessions are the only two sessions that have come up and haven't dropped since. So I'm assuming the tunnel is actually up, active and working. Now, the only way to prove that, I guess, would be to actually see if this is online and run a speed test. Now, Edge seems to have a connection because of course it brought up all the news page. Let's jump onto Google and it's going to load the Virgin Media speed test. Virgin Media speed test. Now, the only reason I'm using this is because it's exactly the same one we used previously, and also it doesn't actually store any details. And what have I done? I've loaded the broadband deals because it's a sponsored link and not the speed test because I'm an idiot. It also doesn't have all my connection details that I then have to go and edit. Now, if this is working, I would expect about 14 megabit per second download bond, which we're getting. That means the downstream side of stuff is working, which means this isn't a licensing problem because both of them are connected. And on the upstream, I'd expect about 0.8 or 0.80, which that's a bit high. So I'm guessing it's going to settle down, which it seems to be. But that is pretty much bang on, which means this is bonding. And it also means the licensing isn't an issue because we're using the upstream.internet realm for the login, because in the license key I've literally got 1, 2, 3, 4. So it means the licensing is using the realm to know that I've bought my broadband connections in through Upstream Internet and therefore don't require a license. But that is super cool. I'm kind of lost for words to see this working again. I mean, a load of people may think I'm a complete and utter idiot, and yes, I am, but I absolutely love going back through stuff of this era, especially stuff that I personally used, deployed and got working. It brings back so many memories. To many people, this won't mean anything, but to a select few people who know this CD inside out, all of this will bring back certain memories. And yes, I was looking for the CD, it's in the server. I will put the ISO for this on archive.org so people can go and download it. You don't need a license if you just want to explore what was in the back end. You only needed the licensing for bonded. But if anyone wants to have a look at it, you're more than welcome to. But to actually have it running, I'm so fortunate to have everything that I have. I'm so fortunate to have the DSLAM. I'm so fortunate to have Zen as a main channel sponsor and get all this kit. And I'm also so fortunate for you guys watching me relive my dreams and my youth. I love this stuff so much. And I want all of this to be online and hopefully for you guys to access it. What we are doing in the background for the uplink port is building a rather large development network between here, my office, our co-location, and also a number of Patreons that, I say patrons, a lot of trusted Discord members, but it will be at some point accessible to Patreon members to be able to log in and connect and go through all of this and mess around with it in some sort of secure environment to a degree. But for now, just playing with this stuff and seeing it is just super cool. And I can see in the distance the lights from the ADSL cards flashing away as they transfer data. This brings back so many memories to me. This bonded CD I installed so many times. And again, it means nothing to most people, but to me, it means the world. It's so cool, and I'm so privileged to be able to mess around with this stuff. So I think the only other things to do is actually find out what the bonded CD can still actually do. So we'll go through the menu in a Windows XP image, because that's all we can do in a Windows XP image, and we'll also go through the manual as well in detail, because I want to see what I've missed and what we can add to this. Now, some of the other bits we're not going to be able to do at a minute, which is like public IP addresses and so forth. I really do need to speak to the office about getting all of that finalised, because I'm going to need all of that for this build as well in the background. So I will be speaking to them potentially tomorrow about all of that. However, for now, let me fire up, well actually, let me go and get dinner, because it is getting late, and then I will come back to this and we'll go through everything the CD is capable of, everything that's in the documentation, anything I've missed, and yeah, explore it further. I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so off camera I have been messing around with the Windows XP image, and I think I've finally got all the weird connection issues to the bonded CD sorted out, and we're no longer seeing any weird connection messages in Internet Explorer. I've also taken the time to download the current version of Java runtime for this version of Internet Explorer as well, so hopefully we can now go through WebMin and explore it in detail without any weird issues or errors popping up. Now, full disclosure, I have already preloaded all of the menu within Windows XP, just because for the first time after the bonded CD boots, if you go into WebMin, anything that hasn't been preloaded into memory or onto the hard disk for the first time will try and run off of the CD, and that drive is getting incredibly noisy, and I really didn't want to have to be sorting it out in editing. So I have no idea whether this WebMin version here is current of the time, or whether the template or the theme that was created by Victor was specifically designed for the bonded CD. I'm guessing by the branding that this is a theme specifically for the CD, in just giving you exactly what you need for it. So boot up and shut down is exactly that. Restart, boot up the system. You can also do specific actions at startup on to run different services and different custom scripts. You've also got a command shell, so you can execute commands without having to load up SSH. You've got custom commands. Now I believe this was all specifically written for the bonded CD, because there is an awful lot that you can do in here. There's also standard stuff as well, but there's specific things in here like download the CD upgrade, which obviously would only be applicable to the bonded CD. You've got the ADSL line statistics, the ADSL connection statistics. Now I haven't got the lines plugged in at the minute, because it's a couple of days later after I'm recording all of this, so they are currently all unplugged again. But overall you would be able to go and get all the line details out of the Sangoma cards for all of this as well, and seeing this brings back so many memories. But yeah, you've pretty much got everything else as well in here that you could need at really sort of a first glance. It was a really easy to navigate menu. DHCP is there. Now the reason DHCP wasn't running is because the image or the system that I've got came out of a production environment that was running NoNat. DHCP was all turned off, which is why that wasn't running as I expected it to be. A default install has this set up and enabled by default. Now if you go through and edit the config files from the manual, which we'll touch on later, then you can amend and change all of this, but that's why DHCP wasn't running. You've got the file manager, which is all Java based, which was a nice touch. Now I do seem to remember the ability to get to the USB stick from in here, but I cannot find it, and I'm not going to spend hours looking for it. But effectively you've got a Java based version of the file manager. You've got IPv6 VPN, which isn't set up on here, but obviously you can do that through WebMin. And then you've got Kerberos 5, I think it is. Never used it. Obviously you've got the Linux firewall, which is based on IP tables. Again, all of this is controllable via the text files. Network utilities, now that I haven't been into, because that's now loading that off of the CD. But you've got your basic network, I say basic, your network utilities. You've got quite a fair amount there considering what this was aimed at. You've got OpenVPN as well, which again none of this was set up. You've got PPPoE VPN, or point-to-point tunnel protocol VPN server. Obviously you've got running services. The Squid proxy server, which hasn't been set up on this. Obviously the Squid status, which has nothing in it because of course it's not running. System information as a whole in general. text editor. Now this is an interesting thing. I believe this updated with what actually was on the USB stick that then got copied across. So the whole idea, from what I can remember, is the USB stick had all the text files on it which you could build from the manual and the documentation. When this booted, if it found that file, it would then go and copy that file from the USB stick locally to the system and then overwrite that. If it couldn't find it, then it would use a default image that was on here. These are most of the things that have been put onto the USB stick. I'll say a couple of them, like for example Resolve has, but I believe the others that you added also appeared in the text editor as well, and you could also then just go through and edit them. You've got upload and download, so you can physically send stuff and download stuff from the server, and then obviously the log files, which you could go and grab everything relatively straightforward and simply. Now this, if I load it, that's coming off the CD as well. The whole idea of this was it was designed for simplicity, but it was also designed for people that wanted to do a bit more, and also for people that knew what they were doing. The documentation for this goes into quite a lot of depth as to what you can and cannot do with this. The documentation is huge, which we will touch on now. I was planning to go through the documentation in detail, however, looking at it again, it goes on for, well, yeah, sorry, I was rambling and I thought I'd just actually load this. So there are 48 pages in the manual as to detailing exactly what you can do with each configuration step. There are the first time setup instructions, which ironically I had to reread most of them. I haven't reread all of them because of course this came out of a work in production, and all I ended up doing was just changing the motherboard at the end of the day. Everything else that was on it, and the config files to load the base and the default config, but apart from that, everything else that was on there stayed on there and just ran basically. I believe removing some of the files resulted in this defaulting back to its original configuration, like removing the ifconfig for Ethernet 0. That then meant it was running with its local IP range, and therefore NAT was running, so it adjusted IP tables to accommodate for that and just work, so obviously we wouldn't have been able to root out otherwise. Overall, it was designed to be extremely simple, but also extremely complicated if you wanted it to be as well. Now, scrolling through this, and I have read through this, not entirely, but I have skim read a lot of it again. There were options to change how the system booted, so you didn't have to use the CD. You could use a flash drive, you could use a USB pen or a card reader, you could even use a IDE to USB flash, I think it was, or IDE flash module. There was an awful lot you could do, and it gave you instructions specifically for setting up the CD for those particular devices as well. Also upgrade instructions, adding a hard disk to your bonded CD router. Now this was the bit that's with the CD that's in there. Anything that you didn't have, this would run in memory, and for most of the time it was absolutely fine. However, it could crash if you ran out of system memory. Now obviously the disk's still in there, that's still running. Obviously that was caching everything that we were doing, especially with Webmin and so forth, so it was quite a handy thing to have in there, but again it supported it. Details on using public ISP space and how to configure all of that. Obviously then there's routing changing to IP firewall rules and all of this, and IP tables. You've then got each individual file that you could add and the configuration needed for it. So ifconfig.eth0.txt. So interesting that asks you to download it. However, we have a version of that. But you then go into like network, which again you can specify the host name. You've got hosts, so you can actually change the local mapping, like you could do the host files on Windows to local IP addresses, or any IP address for that matter. PPP options, so for MTU and various compression settings. You've got routes you can add in for static routes. You've got commands, VPI, VCI details. You could even go into the point of actually physically changing the Sangoma card standards in how they operate, and also the encapsulation, everything that was going on with it, and also the modularization type. There's a lot to go over in the guide, and we're not going to touch on half of it because we don't need to. I'm going to upload this to archive.org. At the minute, archive.org for me and a few others is currently down in the UK. I believe there's a routing issue, but this will go up online as well, so you can have a read through it. Also, the ISO for the CD will go up as well, so if you want to spin it up in a VM and mess around with it, you're more than welcome to. But the CD was a fantastic piece of software and it was a fantastic solution. And I am privileged and honoured to be able to mess around with it again. So I'm going to stop here. This is already getting quite long as it is because I'm editing this as I go this time, because I'm actually for once on top of a video, which is nice, and I've actually really enjoyed again messing around with this. So let's jump back to where I normally be and have a quick rundown, and we'll go from there. So this has been an absolute genuine joy of a video to make, and I know I say that in a couple of my videos, but genuinely this has. I make these videos to try and awaken old memories in you lot and try and relive youth and everything, so that you just bring back memories. I'd never expected to do that to myself. Now, every bit of retro kit that I have shown on the channel so far, I have kept purposely for a reason. This, on the other hand, I installed at a company that I used to work for almost 2 decades ago. Now, originally when I was offered this back in January, I refused it. And the only reason I have opted to have it back now is because of the DSLAM and the channel, and being able to do some good with it and actually make some content. And I'm so glad I did, because it's enabled me to relive memories myself. I never expected to be going back to the same building and speaking to the same site manager that I did 20 years ago when I physically installed this bit of kit. Also, I didn't expect to find pictures of me having physically installed this in racks as well. I say things happen for a reason, and I do genuinely believe that is the case. A prime example is the board. When I first got this, I did look for spare parts, and I had done for a few weeks and couldn't find anything. It wasn't until we tried to power it up that, well, I say power it up, it powered up, that obviously we discovered we needed a new board, which was relatively evident anyway. But to find the exact board that's currently in there for this, it was almost like it was meant to be. This whole thing has been an absolute pleasure to work on, but it's also reminded me of things we've lost over the years as well. So back in 2006, when broadband was relatively quite new, everything was still people were playing with it and trying to mess around with it, and then you had companies like Upstream Internet developing bits like this. At the time, I didn't realise or appreciate how complicated yet simple this device is, or the platform is. And by that I mean this catered for every single user. This catered for people that didn't really have any technical understanding, and that they could go out to Upstream Internet, buy a broadband connection, buy hardware, and run the operating system off of a CD while simply editing a few config files on a memory stick to make it boot and operational for their network. You then had the intermediate users that wanted to run NoNat and their own firewall and everything behind it, which they could do, to the advanced users that actually wanted to go through and edit the config files to amend the Sangoma cards to get the most amount out of them for their lines and experience, to be able to get the best out of both worlds. There is something we've lost over the years, and this has made me remember it. I mean, back at the time, the only other option really was something like a Cisco, or another piece of enterprise business equipment, which, let's be honest, isn't exactly user-friendly even today to set up. So something like this ticked all the boxes, and it's something that we've missed. I would say it's really difficult even today to find something like this as an all-in-one plug-and-play product. It has been a genuine honour to work on this and breathe life back into it. And it will continue to run as well. Now this has been refurbished, I need to sort the case out and tidy up a few other things, but it will end up in the network as a fully operational piece of equipment. But again, all of this wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for Zen and giving me the original DSLAM that sat next to me, that enables me to run hardware like this in the way that it was intended back in 2006. So whether you're in the UK and looking for broadband, go and check out Zen. They are an amazing bunch of people. Link is in the video description below. Now this is kind of a bittersweet end, because yes, this will go away for a little bit, but it means I can get this large thing out of the way and start playing with other large bits of equipment like what Zen has sent me, which I did do a short on. If you haven't seen it, go and see it. But there is a stack of equipment that we now need to get through from a carrier perspective. So Whether you're subscribed, stay tuned. If you're not subscribed, get subscribed. That's what I'm trying to say, because all of that is now going to start coming up in future videos, and there's a lot of it. And I'm excited, genuinely excited about all of this. I think the first thing we're going to look at doing is playing with the advar. Now I play with these, I say play with these, we use these an awful lot in work for OpenReach circuits, but they are locked to OpenReach and OpenReach do all the management. To actually have an unlocked chassis and also unlocked CPE to be able to play with is a relatively rare thing, because most of these devices are supplied by OpenReach and they are locked to OpenReach, and you cannot easily, I'm aware of, factory reset them if at all possible. So that I'm really looking forward to do. So make sure you are subscribed for that in future videos. And also Discord. Discord has been live now for a couple of weeks. We have had an amazing group of people come in from the community that have actually been talking with us outside of it. The link for that is in the video description. Get on Discord. There are a bunch of us on there. It is an honor to speak to all of you outside of the channel as well. There are also a load of technical people in there that actually are helping others go through various different products and issues that they are having. We also discuss future videos, and we also have a monthly meetup as well on Discord via video, which is an interesting, I say couple of hours, it tends to be like 4 or 5 hours, so you're all welcome to come and join that. So make sure you get on Discord. And I think that is where I'm going to end this. This has been an amazing video. If you are still here watching, you are absolutely amazing, and I cannot thank you enough. And on that note, I will see you in the next one. Take care.